The Earley Show is brought to you by our friends at Answering Legal. For more than a decade, attorneys have trusted Answering Legal's 24/7 virtual receptionist service to keep their phones covered and their clients cared for. Now, they're raising the bar with an AI-powered intake chatbot, live translation services in over 180 languages, and 76 seamless tech integrations. Answering Legal's goal? Make running a law practice simpler while helping you capture every new client opportunity. And don't worry, the receptionist team is still the best in the business at turning first-time callers into loyal clients. Find out what's possible by visiting answeringlegal.com. You'll find a link to the site in the description of this episode. Now, let's get to the show. Hi, everyone. Welcome to another episode of the Earley Show, sponsored by our friends over at Answering Legal. I am your host, Chris Earley, a personal injury attorney in Massachusetts. And as you know by now, on this show, we always bring you the best and brightest from the legal industry. And today is no exception. We have the pleasure of having Monty Cain, a very successful personal injury lawyer who scaled his practice in Oklahoma, competitive market. Monty has experienced a lot, right? He's been through a lot and he's seen a lot of success. So as always, I'm sure we'll have plenty of writer-downers for you, the audience. So with that, Monty, I'd like to welcome you to the show. How are you today?
I'm doing great, Chris. I appreciate you having me on. Thanks a lot.
Well, thanks a lot. I appreciate you for coming here, making time. I just want to share that I met you at I believe a PILMA conference. We were seated together at a table. I've met you at a couple of PILMA conferences, and I always found you to be very, down to earth, genuine, easy guy. I know that you work your butt off, your tail off, but you're a nice man. So a lot of admiration for you, and I appreciate this conversation with you. Having said that, could you introduce yourself to the audience? If you could just briefly, tell us a little bit about coming up, your upbringing, and how that impacted you, and the man you are today.
Okay. Well, yeah, and appreciate you, Chris. And we did meet at a PILMA conference probably 5 years ago-ish, somewhere along those lines. I think we went out with somebody, dinner together, and got to know each other. And you're an extremely nice man as well. And I thought down to earth and incredibly hard worker, and enjoyed watching you grow since then, because you've done a great job and took a lot of those lessons that we learned at PILMA and turned them into action, and helped grow your practice to what it is today, which is impressive. So anyway, just wanted to say that, and I appreciate you having me on. As far as my upbringing, it's, I'll try to be as short as possible about it, but I had a quite a bit of life before I became an attorney. So, I grew up, I was born in Oklahoma, moved to the East Coast when I was 6 months old, spent 12 years out there on the East Coast. My dad worked on Navy radar systems. So we are Norfolk, Virginia, Charleston, South Carolina, also in Fairfax, Virginia, Winston-Salem, North Carolina, and then moved back to Oklahoma when I was 12 in 1970, because I'm old. Then from there, my dad grew up on a farm. My mom grew up in a small town, and I got the experience, going out the farming life, which, he did a little bit of, planting wheat and having cows. I milked cows and harvested and planted wheat, and baled and hauled hay in extreme heat. So,
Wow.
So anyway, those were, and I enjoyed it, but it also made me understand why I needed to stay in school too, because it's not easy work. So went to college, ended up getting a petroleum land management degree, which in Oklahoma was a very good degree to have in the early 80s. And then there was a Penn Square Bank failure, which a lot of people may not know about, but kind of put the oil business worldwide into a tailspin, and pretty much kept it there for about 10 years. So had a job. That happened my last semester of college. The job was taken away. I spent probably a year trying to find a job in that field. Couldn't find one. They shut down, the petroleum land management programs and, colleges all across the country. I think OU, where I got my degree, was the last one standing, and I think survived. But it just never bounced back. So my wife had a marketing degree and decided to go into. She wanted to buy work in the jewelry business and own a jewelry store. So I said, well, that sounds like a good idea. Let's do it together. So anyway, I went to work for Gordon's Jewelers and ended up working for them for 9 years. And it's a lesson that's, I think, very good, especially on the personal injury side, learn sales. So, part of our job as personal injuries is sales. So, in working with people and public, and just customer service. So I think it was good lessons in that regard. Also weighted tables. I think that's another good thing to learn how to deal with people and talk to people and treat them right. And those are lessons that are very valuable that some people just don't experience before they become an attorney. So anyway, I rose to a district manager, then a regional manager, had 15 stores, 250 employees, I think, when I was 29. Then Zales bought our company and paid too much for it, and Zales went into bankruptcy, and then the cuts started coming. So there's 72 of us, and they went down to 32, and I was number 33. So I lost my job, and I had a baby on the way. I was married, had a baby on the way. And so, what to do at that point. I did get another job in the jewelry business, but at that time I said, this is pretty much like being a coach. So you're only as good as your last, month or year. And so we needed to find something else. When I was going to college, I thought about going to law school and didn't. And so took a step off the cliff and got in, applied for law school and got in, and went through night school, did summer and all that, and got out in about 3.5 years because I had to work. I had family during that time frame, and so then became an attorney when I was 36 years old. So started a little bit late in my career. Worked for a firm that for about 16 years. Then just the evolution. Their kids came in and were kind of taking over. There really wasn't a future path for me to be a part of the management of the firm. So I took another leap of faith and stepped off the cliff again and went and opened my own firm with just me and one assistant. And went from not making a whole lot of as far as revenue up to where we are today. Today we've got about 50 of us, I think, between attorneys, staff, some offshore people. So over, I guess, was that a 14-year period of time that we've grown that. And I would say most of that's happened in the last probably 6 years, or maybe a little bit longer than that, 8 or 9 years, actually. It took 4 or 5 years for things to kind of build. We've grown organically. We did do, I did the phone book marketing for a while and then changed over to digital. I've never done TV or radio at this point. We did add some billboards recently, but anyway, we've grown to this size, and we've, the hard transition, and this may be going on a little too long, but we can get in more detail. But, the last few years have really been trying to transition from a mom and pop organization to a corporate organization. And then things like going to Pilma, where I met you at, was when I first started that journey probably 5 years ago, and trying to make that transition, which is still happening today. It's not something you can flip a switch and do overnight. And we're trying to get all the pieces in place, and we're much closer than we were then. Learned a lot of lessons from that. And then, got into some masterminds a couple of years ago. Wish I'd done both of those much sooner in my career. So I would encourage anybody listening, if they want to grow their firm, they need to learn the business side of practicing law, as well as, I think at that point in my career, I was very good at handling cases and litigating cases and trying cases, but wasn't confident in what my numbers were I was scared to hire somebody, whether I could afford to pay them. So I think going to these conferences and masterminds help teach you what look at your inventory and what does that tell you, and project your growth. And so our growth is happening much more rapidly now. I think because I understand what I can, how I can grow and how much I can afford to, even still organically without going out and getting in debt doing that. So anyway, I guess that gets us up to date. Now I'm 67 and plan on still going for as long as my health and my physical health and mental health is stays intact. I'll still go several more years anyway. I hadn't really decided exactly how long.
Oh, you're just getting going. You're just getting started, right?
Yes, yeah, I got started late, so I got to keep going for a while.
Well, first of all, see, I knew we were gonna have a good conversation here, and this hasn't disappointed whatsoever. So my ears just to unpack a little bit what the gems you just dropped on this audience. So what my ears really perked up when you first started talking, right, about the struggle of working with your hands, working hard in heat. I've shared with the audience my probably biggest lesson was working construction in college.
Yeah.
And Monty, it beat my ass down and I hated it. I woke up in the morning. This is in college. This is in summer. I wasn't doing this full, this is just a summer gig making good bank at the time, but it kicked my ass. And Monty, I wasn't taking college seriously enough. I was sort of just distracted by, fraternity life. And I came back after that first summer to get my ass kicked. And I said, I'm going to study because I can't do this for a living. And so I share with the audience, and I think this resonates with you from hearing your story. Don't discount the value of a good ass whooping, because it really is an education to propel you forward and to show you kind of what you don't want to do and what maybe is a better avenue. So that really resonated with me. Waiting tables, I did that. My wife and I are always saying, Monty, we want our kids when they're old enough to wait tables, because there's so many lessons for entrepreneurs, so many lessons for lawyers, customer service, time management, multitasking, service, basically just serving people at a high level. So that really resonates with me. So kudos to you for jumping off the cliff. You mentioned that a couple times. I love that, because that's literally what this podcast is about, is jumping off of cliffs, getting uncomfortable and finding our way, because we're going to find ground. We're going to find our footing. So you had the chops, the nerves to take those jumps. And frankly, a lot of people don't. And so kudos to you for doing it, at 36. I think it's awesome.
Yes, yeah. Some of it is, not so much me as I had a little shove behind me, and I think I had to. So, I was pretty conservative, and it was a little scary. But on both those situations, I kind of got a little nudge, and also lesson learned is one door closes, another one opens, and don't be scared of failing. You can turn that around and don't worry about starting late. If somebody's watching this wanting to get involved in the legal space or opening business on their own at some point, even though they think they're too late in life. I guess I've been 53, I guess, when I actually went out on my own finally. So that's not, I wasn't a young pup at that point. So.
I love it. I love that. I love it. Well, look, I mean, if there's some, older members of the bar listening to this, it's never too late. Let's look outside of legal for a second. Ray Kroc, McDonald's, I think he was in his 50s when he started to get really going. The Colonel, right, KFC, he got going, I think in his like 60s or something. So there's no time like today. What's that saying, Monty? The best time to plant a tree was 20 years ago. The next best time is today, right? So
heard that, and that's very, very true.
Oh, it's absolutely true. So, okay, so you worked for a firm before you started your firm. Were you doing PI work at that point or no?
Yes. Yeah.
Okay. Only PI or other areas?
Mainly almost all PI. When I first started, I did a little bit of everything. What I call potpourri law, so all comers, so I could earn a living. But really focused on med mal early in my career because the firm I was with, they did a lot of car accident stuff, and so I wanted to have my own little niche. And so I did some med mal with that firm, and then mixed in with just general PI, auto, commercial, and slip and falls and things of that nature. That I pretty much took all comers. And then it was a unique situation where, we developed our own business as well. So we're more like independent contractors under an umbrella of the firm. And so I had to learn to go out and get my own business. They gave me some. I had to develop my own, and eventually it's pretty much mostly my own. But so anyway, that is a little different model than what I have today in my own firm, but somewhat similar. As we encourage our attorneys to go out and get referrals and
Sure.
give them certainly a bigger slice of it, and gives them incentive to do so, and
Yeah.
kind of gives them an unlimited path to make as much money as they want to make.
I like that. I like that because that's going to attract, go-getters who want to bet on themselves and not sit on their laurels and, be complacent, that actually have that hunger, because that's going to help them, their families, help you, your family. Everyone eats better. Everyone does better when everyone's bringing in work. So I frankly, sometimes it's hard to find attorneys, that can bring in the business, and that's okay. But if we can find that, that's wonderful. So let me ask you this. So it sounds like you were generating work at that firm. You realize I'm hustling, I can bring in business. If you can talk about the mindset that led you to leave, without getting, too in the weeds here, just like that was that was jumping off a cliff, you said, right? And that was always scary. You got a family. What was that like to jump off at that point out of that firm?
Well, yeah, it was very scary. I thought about doing it a few times before that. At that point, I was married and had three girls.
Oh, beautiful.
So, in there, I was making good money, not great money, but I was making good money. So it was a scary time to take away that security blanket and go do something on my own. There was just some changes at the firm that really kind of gave me that shove to go out on my own. And
Yeah.
without that shove, I probably wouldn't have done it. I would have said, I'm pretty conservative, and I work hard, but I got a wife and three kids, and college coming up and different things like that. That I just felt like I was needed to the stability, and so what I did was just create instability by doing this. But it was, I had a little shove, and without going into a lot of detail about that, but it was time, and so I was able to take my book of business, and we kind of worked out uh, how that would work out between the two firms. And I started getting in my own cases. And, like I tell a lot of my attorneys now, I was taking, the tough cases that other people didn't want and trying to turn them into something. And it
Mhm.
gave me so much, taught me so many lessons on how to maximize the value of every case I have, which not only is for those marginal cases. Now we got to where we had, okay, decent cases, then good cases, then great cases. But that same lessons can be learned from those marginal cases that you need to apply to the big cases, and not leave anything on the table.
Yep.
So that also was an important period that I went through of how do I make the most out of each case that I have, so I can make a living and be able to take care of the family. So.
So let me ask you if you could, and so you started your firm. Was your wife working, or was this all on you? Bringing.
Well, different periods of time she worked some, and then
Yeah.
sometimes she stayed at home. So
Yeah.
when our two of our the last two, she stayed at home for a period of time, 7 or 8 years, and then went back to work. But
It's tough.
yeah,
Take everyone's, we're all kind of rolling the dice here and, hoping it's going to work out. Clearly it did work out very well. Now you have a 50-person firm. Now you took over some cases from that other firm. How were you getting cases otherwise? I think you mentioned the yellow pages. Were you just doing, what lawyers were doing at that point, your conventional stuff? And, not only what were you doing, but what was working at that time to bring in cases looking back that you realized?
yeah. I mean, at that point, I was still doing the phone book, and started digital. I can't recall whether I started that before I left or shortly after I started with my own firm, but it was somewhere around that time frame. So probably 15 years ago, that started the digital started getting traction. So I got into that space. And so, I didn't have a lot of money. So we'd get in a few cases and then just have to work them. And, I think a lot of that is, 4 or 5 years, 6 years down the road, it started to snowball. So took care of, had a very personal relationship with most of those clients because I had a small enough group that I could have that with them. And so between getting some in from the digital advertising, phone book advertising, um, word of mouth from my clients was where I was getting a lot of the other cases from. So, and over a period of time, that just kind of started snowballing. And, a lot of our referrals still to this day come from, past clients that I had 10, 15, 20 years ago. So that's a great lesson for, the customer service side of it and trying to maximize the value of the case for each individual. We made them feel seen and that their case was important. And even all smaller cases, I tried to treat the small cases as important as the bigger cases, and at least uh, obviously there's money difference in those two, but I just felt that was necessary and tried to, because even some people they miss a couple of weeks of work and they're paycheck to paycheck and it's devastating to them.
Yeah.
So it's just versus somebody that may have a more serious injury, but they had reserves that they could get by that. So, you just tried to take those lessons of having to deal with people that weren't as fortunate and trying to do a good job for them.
I want to ask you a question. Before I ask you that, I want to ask, at this stage of your growth, you're obviously, big success. How do you, I ask this selfishly because I get this a lot as I'm growing. How do you handle a situation where the client wants to talk to Monty, right? Even though Monty's spinning 84 and a half plates over his head, and really juggling a lot of stuff here as the entrepreneur, owner, visionary. Because what you just described was your handholding. You're able to handhold all the clients and show them, that TLC. How do you handle that today? Your name's the girl, but you can't talk to everyone all the time.
Yeah, I still get some of that, but typically I'll partner up with one of the attorneys and tell them they can contact me anytime, but really the other attorney takes the lead on it, and it's worked out pretty well. I get calls, occasionally saying, "Hey, nobody's paying attention to my case," or something nature. And so we deal with that, but over time that's gotten a little less and less as I've kind of pulled back a little bit as far as caseload. Still try to be actively involved in most of the bigger cases, and either actually still working some of them and or certainly sitting in on the meetings. What do we need to do next? As far as expert discovery wise, that type of thing, and giving them my ideas on how to move that forward. One thing that very big on, I think it made a big difference in my career. I think as well a few things, but one of the things is getting involved in conferences, which there's tons of them now, but say 15 years ago there weren't that many.
Right.
At least nationally, there you went to your CLEs in your state, not to these national things. So got involved in some trucking conferences and brain injury conferences, and I think we've really created a niche for commercial motor vehicle. And I always tell people that I didn't know how to handle one until I started going to one of those. And I feel that's true. I handle my daughter's, um, 30 years ago or not, well, probably 15 years ago or something before I'd gone to those conferences. And it's just been invaluable for our growth and maximizing the value of those cases, and learning how to handle those properly. And the same thing with brain injury. I think we kind of were on the cutting edge of, handling brain injuries in a more or a different way that we do it at this point. Kind of started that, I think, in Oklahoma sooner than I think on the East Coast, West Coast. There's people out there doing those, and then partnered with an attorney that had a lot of experience in it and learned from that. So I would encourage anybody, if you don't know an area, go to conferences.
Oh yeah.
Partner with a experienced attorney that's in that particular area that you got a case for. Yes, you got to give up some of that fee, but what you're going to learn and be able to monopolize for your own firm going forward on the next case you get, you can take that lesson and run with them yourself in the future, but you need that education. So one thing is that we never stop learning. Try to.
Yeah. I was reading a book last night, and the book mentioned usually the most successful people are just constantly reading. It's like
obvious, but think about it like it's true. Like I'm always reading, you're always reading. But like getting educated, like the real education happens not in the classroom, it's at conferences. And I would argue it happens in the hallways, not just someone speaking from a stage, but the handshakes in the hallway. Getting that one nugget. Because if you get one nugget, it was worth it in my mind to leave my usual routine for a couple of days, right? You got to get out of the office. Like I speak your language. You have to get out to grow, to develop.
Hey everyone, it's Chris. If you ever have a personal injury case here in Massachusetts that you can't take on, or just want to refer out to a trusted firm, my team and I would love to work with you. Since 2004, I've only practiced personal injury law, and my team and I pride ourselves on handling referrals with transparency, good communication, and care for your client. And if you're not already getting it, head on over to practicetipoftheweek.com practicetipoftheweek.com to join my free email list. It goes out to hundreds and hundreds of lawyers each and every week with actionable marketing and practicing tips. Thanks for listening. I look forward to collaborating with you.
Now, a lot of the audience, they're not up to 50 people in their firm. Maybe they're just starting out. Maybe they're thinking about starting out. Could you take us back to the beginning? Is there one or two things that you kind of wish you did differently looking back? If you had a mulligan, you would do differently in terms of getting started and getting your firm off the ground that maybe the audience could glean from?
Oh yeah, absolutely. I made plenty of mistakes, and
Same.
I really didn't start out thinking about growing to the size that we are, and it kind of happened. But I would say I inhibited our growth quite a bit for several years just because I didn't understand the business side of it. So I would encourage everybody to get involved in some conferences or masterminds, things of that nature, to learn the business side if they're really wanting to grow their firm. But we went from mom and pop where at some point you can't handle everything. So learning how to delegate, hiring the right people. I think we've got a good mix of people with different talents. So what I've looked for is people that have talents that I don't have. There's attorneys in our office that are really great with personal marketing or litigation or operation skills, things of that nature. So we've tried to get a good mix of people that can handle the different, operations portion of it, the litigation portion of it, because I was one of the litigators, and I've had to step back out of that, so I've had to hire a litigator to take that place. So anyway, I would say learn the business side of it and know from your numbers what you can afford, how you can afford to grow. I wouldn't necessarily encourage going and getting a line of credit and getting debt and spending a lot of money. I would always put most of the money back into the business, and now it's reaping those rewards. But several years, I didn't take that money out. I just kept putting it back into the business, and I'd add a little bit to the digital advertising or a little bit to, whatever needed to be paid for. And over a period of time, that starts to grow. And then at some point, then you're going to reap that benefit. We've had to really start, I got a COO recently, which I hadn't had, a fractional one. That's been really a game changer. We're looking at getting an HR person to take that off the plate, got a bookkeeper to take that off the plate. Now we have somebody that does a dedicated intake. We just recently split from attorneys handling everything to just pre-litigation and litigation. So we got into that size that we needed to start make those changes. But going back, it's just I was hiring too slowly because I didn't understand the business side of it, and inhibited the growth. So the main takeaway is, go to these conferences that talk about the business side of the practice. If you're owning your own firm, you need to know that you can't be just a great attorney and litigator and grow your business without knowing that portion of it. And because I tried it for several years and was very conservative. And if you really want to grow, then you need to understand that side of it. And then you'll have confidence in hiring that extra attorney or staff that you may need, because at some point we were getting our own way because we had a number. Every time I hired somebody, we would turn more cases quicker and we would pay for it. And then,
Yeah.
when you first look at it, you go, I don't know if I can afford it with where it is today.
Yeah.
You got to look at your inventory and know where you can be tomorrow if you can maybe turn those cases a little bit quicker with the additional staff or attorneys.
Are you handling cases now or not at all?
A few, just
good one.
helping
Really
us.
good one.
Yeah, the bigger ones.
Okay. Just curious, what is your day to day like at this stage of your scale, right? Like, what are you just, do you meet with your department heads? Like, what's the majority of your day kind of look like day to day?
Yeah, there's, there is a constant flow of coming in and out of my office. It seems like we're trying to make that more intentional on how we do that. We do a executive or operational meeting on Mondays that we schedule it for 2 hours, but typically it goes 3 or 4 a lot of times, and because we're still putting in a lot of changes. I have an office manager, a litigation manager, and a pre-litigation manager for the caseworkers. We have team leads that are over 3 to 5 other caseworkers, and some of the offshore people. And then we have a litigation group as well. And so we meet with them every other week. And then we have a marketing group on Tuesday. And then we have an intake group that we meet with as well, weekly to try to keep up with that. So, we're still in that growing phase and trying to get to where we haven't really been all in on our case management system, which is kind of a shortcoming that I didn't stay on top of. And hopefully we can be data driven here soon within the next couple of months, because we've made a dedication to get on that so we can have the data to use it to manage where, cases need to be pushed, and, also manage people, to find out who needs training or counseling, things of that nature. So that's kind of what our day looks like. And then I have meetings regularly with what we call our BACs. We call them big ass cases. So I try to.
I heard that before. I kind of like that.
Yeah. So anyway, we named them that a few years ago, and then so I try to be involved in those meetings so that we try to have a regular, every couple of weeks that we sit down with each attorney, and that the litigation staff and I get involved and try to make sure that we're moving that case along, and what do we need as far as discovery, expert-wise depositions, and try to stay involved in those. Even I have another attorney that's got 30 years experience, and he always says he enjoys me being in there just because it's another experienced person taking a look at a big case and how can we maximize the value out of that particular case. So I would say that's takes up a lot of it between we get all those particular meetings out, and it's pretty much week in, week out that we try to refine our processes. And we're work in progress, probably always will be, but there's still some heavy lifting that we've got to do to truly transition from a mom and pop to more corporate based. So
what do you think is your biggest challenge currently at your level of scale?
The just people, hiring the right people, I would say, is the biggest challenge. And now we've gone to where we're just always, we say we're always hiring. So we're looking for new people all the time. We've outgrown our building, so we're having to look for options on that as well. But just trying to hire qualified people that have a like mindset, that they're good at customer service, that care about the clients, that type of thing. So anyway, so right now I think the thing that we're really concentrating on is trying to get our case management system in place so we can be data driven. There's a lot about culture that that's been discussed at a lot of conferences and masterminds and things of that nature. And kind of one thing I came to a realization, because I was trying to follow a lot of that, and I agree with it. And you need to have a good culture, but before what goes hand in hand with that I don't at least hear, or maybe I've missed in some of the conferences, is you have good performance,
Yeah.
and they go hand in hand. So you can't have just good culture and that we're going to do a lot of things for you. And I've been using the term lately as we're not in the business of a present or a trophy for participation. So we're results driven. So we've got to have that from top to bottom and be able to evaluate performance by every single person in our organization, and we're trying to get to that point. And then I think the mom and pop always said it's a work family here, and we try to treat everybody that way, and try to treat them with respect, whether they're the receptionists. I don't try to treat them any different than I do my top litigator. So anyway, we try to develop culture that way. And then I think we need to layer in the part that we've been missing, is to be able to really be driven by data on performance. And because I really hadn't been able to tell, like, they showed up, they come to work, they're nice, they're pleasant, but have they actually performed well? And not necessarily to give them the stick, but training or counseling or whatever, to try to get them to, maybe they're a C player, try to get them to an A and B player type thing. So that's what we're hoping to get in place by the first quarter of next year. So,
that's one of my biggest challenges. A guy, you may know, Bill Biggs, he's a national authority in this industry. He's been on this show. He talks about the philosophy, and I stole this from him: love your people and demand high performance. And I'm always trying to go like 50-50 on that whole deal, right? Culture versus performance. You're never going to get it. You're never going to be able to straddle that fence perfectly. It's always like leaning one way. And we're just people trying to lead people, right? That's what we're doing, Monty. And that's hard. So that really resonates with me. It's so hard. It might, frankly, be upfront with the audience. I think, am I being too nice today? Am I being too hard? There's like no way to do it perfectly. So what you just said really resonates with me. I just want to share with the audience, and I agree with you. It always comes down to people. No matter what size you are, if you're growing, you're going to need people to help you, to boost you, to help you, get done what you're trying to get done. We have on our webpage that always lives there. It's a "We Are Always Hiring" page, right? So it just sits there. Maybe you already do it as well, but for anyone in the audience who doesn't, have that on your website. If you have one person in your staff or 17 or 170, have something on your website that signals we're in growth mode always. We're always expanding, always looking for A players. Applied today. You never know who that's just a line in the water. You never know who that's going to bring in. Let me ask you. So you're still a young man, but do you work as hard as you used to, or have you taken your foot off the gas a little bit to have fun outside of the office?
Interesting question. Thanks for asking that. I've worked long hours for my entire career, even before I became an attorney and going to law school. I was working full time, going to school from 6 to 9, and then studying from 9 to probably 1 in the morning, getting up at 6 or earlier and doing it all over again for about 4 years. So anyway, the long hours never bothered me, and I got to give a shout out to my wife, who was very supportive of that. And without that support, for her encouraging you and being able to open your own business, and sometimes not always being there for every single thing, and them being a partner with you in it, even though they're not actually working in the firm. But yes, I have, in the last year or so, said, okay, I need to start enjoying what I've built, and I'm at that age where anytime today's a gift and tomorrow's not a promise, but it becomes more apparent the older you get. So anyway, I am hopefully trying to get the pieces in place to where I can slow down a little bit, and I'm already feeling it. So we have, an HR person, I think, is going to take a lot off our plate. The COO that I've hired I'm already feeling that we're moving towards the things that I could never get to more rapidly. And I think the marketing gal that we have coming on next week, I think, will help take a lot off of Riley in my office, helps me with marketing. And it's a full-time job, and then it gets in the way of practicing law and then managing the law firm. So all those little pieces that we're trying to get in place that are I've been wearing all those hats for all those years. And so we're trying to offload and delegate that to competent people. And then hopefully I can get out and travel a bit more. And I did last year, and hopefully to continue to increase that. So, but I want to make sure that the right pieces are in place that the firm can run without me being here and constantly hovering over it. And so I'm trying to get to that space. And so it's not easy, but we're getting there.
Well, you work your tail off, right? You have for decades. So it's who you are. And I'm a little younger, but still I relate to that. Like you just want to, I don't know, I like working. I don't know why, but sometimes I like the pain that I experience. I keep coming back. I'm too dumb to quit, Monty. I think that's what comes out for me. But this stuff is hard that we're talking about, right? This stuff is all challenging. I want to give a shout out to Riley Harrison. Riley's the one who set us up on this podcast. I've seen Riley, met him at conferences, and he's always posting on LinkedIn. Good energy. You got a good one with Riley. So, hats off to you for finding him, bringing him into your firm, developing him, elevating him in the firm. I see you guys doing great things along with the rest of your firm. So can I just ask you, I'm curious, it sounds like you had a kind of a shift. You've used this mom and pop reference a couple times, right? But you're clearly not mom and pop and have not been for quite some time. I'll share that I had a really bad day, probably, 7 years ago at my office, and I was just pissed. I came home. My wife was like, "What are you doing home? You never take a day off." I'm like, "I'm just pissed. I'm not doing it today." I started Googling. I found a legal conference. It was Ben Glass. I went to his conference. That was a pivot for me. It changed my whole career, similar to when I was working construction. And I said, I don't want this stuff anymore. So I started working in school. That was another pivot. That was a whiplash for me. Then my career it's like a caveman who found fire. And I was just like off to the races, living the life I should live, be happy, be prosperous. For you, as you were evolving, was there a whiplash moment, or were you just slowly realizing I need to run this more like a business? Any particular moments that stand out to you in that beginning of your journey?
Well, I think a little bit of both. It was a slow build, but at the same time, a couple of things that I think that really changed our practice was going to a PITLA conference, which kind of predated the ATAA conferences on the trucking. And that opened my eyes and how to handle a commercial motor vehicle case. And I was fortunate enough to have a few of them back then. I didn't have a lot of them, but we had a few of them, and helped me maximize the value of those. And we ended up changing the law in Oklahoma regarding whether or not you could sue the company directly. And so one of my cases that went up to the Supreme Court, and we were successful with that appeal. And so for negligent entrustment, issues, negligent hiring, things of that nature, now we were able to pursue that. And so that was a pivotal point in our career as far as getting more trucking cases as well because of that case. And then the other one I talked about is I had a gal that was in a commercial motor vehicle case and had all these symptoms that weren't. She had very mild orthopedic problems. Got hit 69 miles an hour. Was disabled on a bridge that only had like a 3-foot shoulder on it, and she's having all these headaches and PTSD stuff and so on and so forth. And that's when I met another attorney from Virginia, and he had been the AAJ president of the brain injury litigation group, and partnered with him on that case. And so learned so much from him, and was able, and that's really before kind of the mild TBI stuff had really gained much traction in Oklahoma anyway, and was able to figure out that, we just weren't asking the right questions when we were doing intake with clients. Mm-hmm. And so we found there's probably 15 to 20% of our cases that we were getting in had these kind of similar problems to
Right.
varying degrees, obviously, but that was a major turning point. We started really increasing the value of those cases. Okay, a $25,000 case became a 50, or a 50,000, 100, or 100,000, 250, and sometimes over $1 million type thing. So that really changed it. And going back to the one that I took up the Supreme Court on the commercial motor vehicle case, I also had partnered with another attorney that had a lot of trucking experience, and learned so much from that experience, and then also taking up the case of the Supreme Court on the negligent entrustment side. So I would say those couple of things were game changers for learning how to maximize commercial motor vehicle cases, and then also for brain injury cases, which increased the value of our average attorney fee significantly when we were able to do that, and that's helped I guess, fuel the growth much quicker, I'd say, because of that.
Oh, no question. I call it detecting early what are the top cases, because that's the majority of the revenue, right? By far, that's the majority. So we're in the detective business. How do you detect the kick-ass cases, or however you described it, right? The best firms, as you're speaking about, the best firms, right, do that early and often. They get better and better and better at tweaking intake, tweaking the questions that the attorney first asks in that first call once the case is signed. That's critical. You have to triage your cases. You have to understand your inventory because it's frankly your obligation to the client ethically. Get the client their full cup of justice. That's a good way to do it, right? Right from intake. Let me ask you. So I think you mentioned earlier you have not done radio or TV. Is that right?
That's correct. I have not.
And that's impressive, because a lot of firms that scaled to your size have. So a lot of digital, and then boots on the ground, shaking hands, coffee, networking, stuff like that. Is that the lion's share of how you sort of, have built up, scaled up inventory wise?
Yes, exactly. I mean, we did add billboards this year, so that's the first time we've done that. May consider TV down the road to continue the growth and really to try to get out a branding type situation. That's kind of why we did the billboards. And we, recently, like I discussed with you earlier, is that, we have a tagline called "In Pain, Call Cain." So, I'm fortunate enough to have a last name that rhymes with something like that. So it's pretty catchy. And that's the main thing. We want them to remember that.
Oh, yeah.
And I think that's will help with the branding going forward. But most of it, it's been digital, and I've been, over the years, was, changed up digital, and I'm constantly looking at it. And one of the things you asked, what did my day look like? I meet with our digital team frequently. I got deep dived into it, learned a lot about it, challenged them. And
Good.
if I had the other, thing that I would recommend to people is that you need to do that, because otherwise, if you're not constantly looking under the hood, nobody else is. And even if you got a good, SEO group, they need that, and they need to be looked at, need to be pushed. And then that has helped, accelerate that as well, I think. And then just constantly adding a little bit more each year to the advertising verticals or lanes or whatever you want to call that, that we've done over the years. And then the boots on the ground. The past clients have been a big source of that. And then, we have medical providers in the state of Oklahoma that know we do a good job and refers clients as well. So,
Do you guys do newsletters?
have not done that. So, something we probably need to be doing. But, again, that gets back to I probably grew or expanded my staff too soon. And it's just one of those things that, that would be a good idea. And to get out to, especially past clients, things of that nature, and also attorney referral groups that we have. And hopefully with our new marketing gal, maybe we can get that started. But I know a lot of people do it. I know you've done it. And I've gotten yours for years, and you do a great job at that. And I would, I'm sure you would recommend it. That's helped a lot. And just one of those things I haven't been able to add to it. just time wise.
Completely understand. But
But
you mentioned referrals. So how are people remembering you then? Your old clients, like 15 years ago. How are you staying in touch, if at all?
Well, and that's the other problem we've talked about for years of right now we do since we've gotten on a case management system, we are able to send out like holiday, just hey, happy holidays, or different 4th of July, just whatever it may be. So we just kind of keep our name out in front of them that way. We
Yeah,
don't
that's
really
good.
advertise to them so
Yeah,
much,
yeah.
but just so they so they just to tickle them a couple of 2 or 3
Yeah,
times,
yeah.
so they remember our name, and we get a good percentage of our new cases every month come from past clients. So,
So about four of those a year, 3 or 4 mailings to the herd, the tribe.
and their text, we do it by text. So we don't
Oh, okay. You texting
really,
everybody or just like
yeah.
okay, that's smart.
So anyway, one of the vendors that we have the ability. They've all been put into that system, and we have their phone numbers, and so we just send out a text to them that has a little, like it's the 4th of July, whatever
That's
that we
good.
have with that. Anyway.
That's helpful. Stay in touch, tickle. The tickler is important. You said something that's really important. I feel like I'll be honest, the average lawyer, who's paying a company, could be SEO, could be billboard, a media, whatever it is, a lot of money, just like writes a check and then looks the other way and hopes for the best. Like you can't do that. If you're running SEO, you have to know about links and content. If you're paying someone to do social media, you have to understand how these platforms work. So encourage the practitioner. You can't write a check and put your hand in the sand. Your head in the sand. You have to study this stuff, and that's where it helps you go to these conferences, right, Monty? Like getting out of the office, getting on an airplane, as I talk about all the time, and just like getting these relationships. I've met just like you. We wouldn't be friends if I didn't go to that conference. We wouldn't be
That's
having this
right.
conversation. And now so many people are going to hear this conversation. So it's like these relationships spawn other relationships, and people are going to be reaching out to me and you after this. So it's like you got to get out to grow, and so you're preaching to the choir on that. But you got to know, a lot of people are spending on SEO. You got to know the game a little bit. You have to be a tech savant, but know how to hold them accountable. Because if you're paying a vendor any amount of money, you need to be able to have a monthly rhythm or a monthly meeting pulse to find out, hey, did you get that done? You said you're going to do those backlinks or whatever. You're going to write that content.
Over the last 15 years, the pace of the changes in the digital marketing space it's just changing all the time, and so it's more difficult to keep up with it now.
It's
But
hard.
it's more and more important to stay abreast of all the changes that are coming on. I've seen so many changes in how Google ads run and SEO runs, and you got the LSAs now and the pay per click and the local
A
local
lot of
Google.
ways to spend money.
Yes,
Ah,
they found a lot of ways and a lot of
yeah.
competition for that.
Oh,
I just call it real estate now. That first page real estate's very valuable, and you got to make sure you stay relevant and that you're on top of it, because you can fall through the cracks pretty quickly if you don't.
well, I think there's an expression in marketing. Where's the best place to hide a dead body? The second page of Google. Or
Yes,
something like that. Because literally real estate, if you're not on, Park Avenue, if you're not on that expensive real estate, you're not going to be found. You're basically dead. So I encourage the audience, you're doing SEO either on your own or someone else. Know where you're at and be honest about where you're at, because that can be crucial for your development and your business development. Let me ask you, I want to be respectful of your time. We're wrapping up here. Is there a book or a podcast or a movie, I don't care, anything that really kind of shaped you and influenced you, impacted you greatly?
well, as far as legal books, I think one of the most important for the personal injury space that I always thought was probably the best book out there is The Rules of the Road. I think that's it's been around a long time, but it's still, all of it applies today. There's been a lot of, I think, variations that have come off of that people have developed and marketed in conferences and legal training, I guess, in the PI space. But I think that's one to start with, and you know, one that's still relevant today. And I have all my new attorneys read that.
Wonderful. Last question. I'm really curious. You've been around the block. This isn't your first rodeo. As you said, laws changing so quickly. If you look in your crystal ball, where do you think things will look like in 15, 20 years? Like, where do you think things are going? There's private money coming in, AI. Like, what do you think a sophisticated practitioner, sophisticated business person should be mindful about and getting better at today to be ready for this, massive change we're undergoing right now in the industry?
Yeah, and there is, and I agree with you. And it's hard for me to really envision
Yeah.
where it's going to take us, but you have to embrace AI. Be careful with it, but embrace it, to use it to. And I've heard a couple of things like AI won't replace the attorneys, but it will. Attorneys that use AI will replace attorneys that don't.
Yes.
So
Yes.
very poignant. So, and then I think there's going to be a lot of consolidation over the next 10, 20 years in the legal space, as far as, the smaller firms will be absorbed into bigger firms. And I think that's what's going. I may be wrong, but
no, I think you're wrong. Nope.
in the small firms, you're going to have a niche to survive. If you're doing what the big firms are doing, then it may be difficult to survive. And I think that's the private equity that's coming in, and how the new structures that they're trying to set up law firms, and different ways that I think there's going to be a lot of consolidation and competition from what we call in the retail space big box stores, right?
Yeah.
So, yeah,
you're not kidding. It's so crazy, man. I mean, it's dizzying. You and I stay on top of this stuff, and we're still like, what the hell? And I literally, Monty, for the practitioner who's sort of, head in the sand, like isn't looking around and, not embracing the change, you're going to get screwed. I'm sorry. Like, stuff is happening fast, and you and I are seeing it. So you got to stay on top of this stuff. Monty, very, very, very grateful for your time today. Grateful for the conversation, the value, the nuggets of wisdom that you dropped on our audience. How can people get in touch with you?
Yeah, we're Cain Law, so you can look us up in Oklahoma City. You can look us up on our website there. Our phone number is 405-759-7400. My personal email, if you want to reach out to me, is Monty, and that's Monty at cainlaw-okc.com. So if anybody has any questions, and be glad to share anything that I know, and hope that might help you in some small way going forward. And Chris, I wanted to thank you for having me on. It was a pleasure, and enjoyed the conversation, and enjoy seeing you all, as always. So.
You as well, Mike. Thank you so much. Really appreciate you. Thank you so much. All right, folks, that's it for this episode of The Earley Show. Be sure to check out more episodes of our show on Spotify, Apple Podcasts, and the Answering Legal YouTube channel.